And welcome, dear listeners. This is another episode of the From Depression to Expression. I have to get used to my new podcast title. This is Oliver, your host. And I have Chistopher Lembke, the Alchemy Experience podcaster and coach here on the other side of my screen. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you can see where to reach out to Chistopher if you're watching it on YouTube. And if you just listen to the podcast, you'll find out where you find the Alchemy Experience. See
Yes.
you. Okay. So, Chistopher, we have met each other around a year ago, a bit more, on the podcasting group through Mind Valley. You were on the verge of being a podcaster. I got to interview you for my Christmas special advents calendar, where you shared your favorite book or one of the books that made a difference in your life. Was a shorter episode, and now we finally, after trying to get this going, we are finally sitting here again. Since we talked last time, I started this new podcast. We talked about it, From Depression to Expression, right? The heavy cloak, this depression, these traumas which keep us closed, and we are not really able to express, really able to create and move forward in life, and how to get there. So for the people which do not know you, who are you? I mean, shortly, where do you live? Where do you come from? What is it you're doing?
Thank you for qualifying that question, because that's often a question I ask myself. Who am I? But yeah, I'm originally from Sweden, living in the UK. Since I left Sweden in '94, I've moved America, UK, Spain. I've been all over the place. But so to speak, the life I'm leading now kind of came about in 2016, and this trajectory I'm on now. But I have a background in entrepreneurship, business, and I've run various different businesses in various different countries, and I have about, I suppose, 5 years of corporate experience. So I knew very early that I was going to be self-employed and be an entrepreneur, and that's kind of where I've been for my professional life, really working as a consultant on sales, marketing, operations, helping businesses to strategically grow, and those aspects. So the coaching I do today is more focused on, well, from the perspective of massive transformative purpose. The business or the coaching I do is really to help or empower humanity to prioritize passion, or purpose rather. It used to be passion. Now I look more at the purpose. Passion kind of fuels purpose, so that's why I've changed it to purpose. And it's so oftentimes I work with people that are in transition of careers. I work with people that are kind of at a stage in the career where they're asking the question, am I fulfilling my purpose in life? And oftentimes, we grow up with this idea that, get a good job and get married, have children, all those things. We have those ideas that we are kind of conditioned with, without us turning around and saying, oh, what is a good job, right? We just forge forward in life and have other people telling us what the concept of a good job is. So, you can meet your bills, you can have a nice vacation every year, whatever those qualifications are. So a lot of times people that come to me, and I mean, I have people in their 20s that come to me that are at those crossroads. I think the no, I'm turning 50 next year, so I'm going to use the concept of the younger generations. They are definitely, quote unquote, waking up to their own purpose a lot earlier than we are in our generations. So it's very interesting to see, but there is also willingness and a courage among the younger generations to say, you know what, I'm just not going to follow that paradigm, the old paradigm. I'm going to forge my own way here, which is very encouraging, I find. But yeah, so it's the way I'm working now, and with my podcast is very much about discussing different concepts in mindfulness, and how we can ask ourselves questions, how we can find ourselves, as I said, asking who am I? That's the perpetual question, right? And I, given different times that I meditate, I can come up with different answers. Am I this physical body? Am I my mental body? Am I this consciousness? Am I this awareness? What am I? So it is my purpose is really to help people start questioning their own motives. Why am I doing this? What am I looking for? What is my purpose? And to help people kind of get to that stage where they can see their purpose and step into their own greatness, as it were.
Wow, that's a big answer. Of course, I didn't plan to go into the who are you in this kind of very, very high question.
No point in beating around the bush. Might as well go to the core of the.
I do. But yeah, you're Swedish and traveled around the world. That's that's the big thing. I was quite surprised because I was having the question, at what age are people actually kind of feeling stuck, where you come in and help them, right? And now you already start mentioning already in their 20s. So what is it, Generation X or whatever they called?
Well, no, I think I'm Gen X, actually. I think we're talking millennials and Gen Z.
Whatever they
Gen
call
Z.
The ones born around 2000.
Yeah, those are the millennials. And I think Gen Z are actually, my children are more considered Gen Z. But yeah, Gen X, I'm definitely Gen X. It's like 65 to 80, I think it is Gen X.
Oh, so then I'm in that generation as well.
Yes, you are.
There we go. You always learn something new. But so, yeah, if they're in their 20s, that means they're born late 90s, early, 2000 kind of, the millennials, so to speak. So they are earlier coming to this awareness where older generations were around, what, 40s, 50s, or what is your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I do some work with people more in the 50s, not so much 60s, 70s. I haven't come across anyway, I should say. But there are, I think it's people decide on their own timing as to when they are ready to make the changes that they desire in their lives. You can, quote unquote, sleepwalk through life and be happy doing that, just kind of going to work every day and pursuing just a paycheck, and then having time with your family on the weekends, and having your 4 weeks, 6 weeks of vacation every year, or holiday every year. And, some people are happy doing that. And so that's the premise of my mindset, is that I have full acceptance for anybody's journey. So I don't pass judgment on anybody who wants to do that, because that is their purpose for that particular time. For me, it's more anybody who comes to listen to my podcast, for example, is probably not going to be on a journey or a path of seeking, as it were. My podcast, I always start, and you will have heard it, Oliver, that, hello, all you seekers, explorers, and the renegades out there. And it is really about that. If you wake up to your own purpose, you wake up to your own self, or start asking the big question, who am I? You're a renegade, because you are starting to break away from your old norms, your own belief systems, your own old ideals, and so forth. The community where you come from is going to perceive you as a renegade. Now, I will perceive you as an explorer and a seeker, and in the positive terms, a renegade, because you are trying to optimize, you find the optimal version of yourself. What is your authenticity? What makes you tick, as it were?
Exactly. So the other question, of course, when people come, they feel stuck in their life of working and having the whatever 4, 5, 6 weeks, or 2 weeks in some countries vacation. So what is the reason for actually realizing that they're stuck? Do you see some kind of a pattern? What happens to the people which come to you, that they have some pattern in what mindset or whatever happens in their life? I don't know.
I think it varies, actually. In Japanese, you talk about, you have kensho and satori moments, right?
Yeah.
Kensho moments where and it's all based on choices. We have anybody who listened to the podcast I released on Friday last week, and we are now 27th of November 2021. I talked about choices and accountability. We make choices in our lives that leads us to the path and to the point at any given time that we're at. So all the choices I've made in my life have led me to where I am today. And likewise for you, Oliver. Now, we can end up judging those choices as good or bad. But what I propagate oftentimes is that, let's not judge our choices, let's not judge our experiences, just allow them to be, find that acceptance and the gratitude for all those choices and experiences. So it's really comes down to choice. You can choose to have a slow awakening, if you like, where you have some people that do study self-improvement and all of those things early in their teenage years, and then you have stubborn people like me who say, no, I'm going to do this and this, and I can control this, and 44 years later, then it all comes crashing down around you, and you go, okay, that didn't work. Okay, how should I approach this now? So the latter being the kensho moment, I think, or the choice of the kensho path, and the satori is the more gentle unveiling, gradual unveiling of your path. So I think you have the ones that reach rock bottom in terms of their own life, and they just see no kind of outcome or way out, rather than to just change and start looking at things from a different perspective. And then you have those that kind of do gradually and say, okay, well, I'm going to be on a journey of just optimizing or finding the optimal version of myself. So then you also have, when you're talking about entrepreneurs and business people, for example, most business people start out with an idea and an ideal, really. And it's that passion of they have a solution to a problem, or they find a gap in the market, whatever it is. And as they move into that and they create the company around that, there's a lot of that beautiful passion that goes into that project. And 7 years down the line, they're sitting there doing bookkeeping, they're dealing with HR issues, they're dealing with all the admin stuff, because that's kind of how we tend to think that you have to run a business, right? So the quote unquote honeymoon period has come to an end. And at that point, a lot of entrepreneurs get very dismayed and disillusioned. So they go, well, this was not what I had in mind. And that is one thing I do as well, is to go in and help those people then to rekindle their passion and purpose with the business, and really to focus on the things that they are good at and hire people that do all the other stuff, right? But a lot of times they have to kind of refine or rekindle that idea of why they're doing what they're doing, or perhaps it has come to end of the road and it's time to set up something else, something different. So it's really comes down to choices, and when do we choose to look at ourselves and say, is this really working for me? Is this really the beliefs I have? Is this, is this authentically me? So I think it's a uniquely individual process. So I don't think there's one answer to your question. It's really as many people as there are in the world, and there will be in the world. That's many different quote unquote awakenings that you're gonna have.
Yeah. No, I was curious because for me it's definitely not feeling right. Things are not working out. So that was basically where I started going, the slow road down personal improvement, classes on, how to find your purpose, probably, or passion or whatever, trying out this, trying out that, and nothing seems to work. And then wondering, like, how comes nothing works? So what is it that I'm missing, right? So that's kind of like what leads you to one step to the other. And that's where I come, from depression to expression. I'm still suffering sometimes from depression because I'm just like too much on the outside. Honestly, I'm too much focusing what happens outside instead of working on myself and just focusing on what I can do. In this situation where we are, 2021, after 1.5 years of all these messages with Corona, it is wearing down. So I try not to think of it because it's just wearing you down. And I'm sure many, many people have the same. They simply do not want to think of it, but somehow it just creeps back into your mind. It creeps back into your awareness, and then you linger on it instead of focusing, what can I do? How can I express myself? Yet for me personally, I think it's also like, what is it really? I feel like I haven't really found it, or perhaps I'm just searching too much. That's what the other people say. That's my story, kind of why I'm looking for things. It could have been that many people are somehow just very bad place in their life, and just like the energy is sucked out, like you say, for the entrepreneurs, right? So like the fire why they started it is not there anymore, and they just go to work and like, seriously. So it could also be for private people, that you just wake up in the morning and like, is that life?
No, and who was it that said that? I think, well, several people who said that, if you don't wake up in the morning and you're super excited about what you're going to do during the day in terms of what your purpose is, and that then goes on for a prolonged period of time, then probably time to take a look at what you're doing. Either what you're doing, you're not doing it in a way that is energizing you and filling you with the joy, then perhaps you can change how you do what you do, or you need to change what you actually do, right? And I mean, I battled depression when I was in my teenage years, and I've had bouts of it since the past 6 years as well. And absolutely, it comes and goes in that sometimes it overwhelms you because it comes from a perspective that you didn't expect. So it kind of just creeps in from a different perspective, and suddenly you find yourself in this thought process, and suddenly you go, hold on a second, this is not how I want to think. And that's so when one thing I've practiced myself, and I teach others as well, is to train yourself to observe your experiences. So instead of acting out and being in the experience, you observe them. So you observe, when I'm talking to you, I practice to observe myself speaking. So it's not the same thing I do in meditation. And, when I listen to a track, for example, in meditation, I try not to hear with my ears. I try to hear with my body. So I observe myself here. I observe the sounds as they come into as they fill my body. So I take myself away from the external experience. And same, if I, bump, kick a piece of furniture or something, or stub my toe, right? Instead of diving into the pain, I observe the pain. I allow the pain to register, and I observe the experience of pain. And then instead of in my thought process then going explicitive, I hurt, and going thought process, that was stupid, why did I have to do that? You can go into that spiral thought process of beating yourself up for having stubbed your toe. I go, okay, interesting, I have pain. Okay, well, it's okay to have pain. And allow the pain to exist, allow the pain to, because it is there to defend you. It's there to register something with you. But you don't have to beat yourself up over it. So training your brain to just immediately go into that inquisition, as it were, or inquiry as to, interesting, I got pain. I stubbed my toe. Well, that happens, that's all right. The pain will pass. If it doesn't, that's okay too. And just that non-attachment that, Buddhism has one of the tenets is the non-attachment, right? So you don't judge your own experience. And so I find that that's quite useful as well, dealing with, when you have low moments, to just be kind to yourself and observe yourself having those low moments. So you go, okay, well, I'm experiencing a low moment, either depression or anxiety. Why is that? Why am I feeling this way? And just reassure yourself that it's okay to feel that way, right? So that's how I work with it myself. In my teenage years, partying was my way of dealing with depression. And because when you're not aware of your power of choice, i.e. how you choose to think and speak and act, then you externalize everything. So, when I do this, I would be happy. I'm depressed because this happened outside of myself, right? And yeah, I mean, of course, those are all trigger points, but we have a choice how we, at the end of the day, there is a choice that exists within us to say, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do from the inside out, as opposed to reacting to the outside influences, right? So yeah, teenage years, a lot of partying, a lot of fun memories, the times I could create memories when we weren't partying too hard, Scandinavia, a lot of alcohol. But the point being that it was always externalizing in some type of a coping mechanism to just to get through it. And then it became a bit of a journey of running away, as it were. I'll go and do this, I'll move there, and then that'll make things better. Well, your body kind of, and your mental state, everything follows where you go, right? So if you go somewhere, it doesn't change your situation. It changes your environment, but not your situation. You're still going to be triggered by the same BS that goes on around you. So you do that often enough, at some point you realize that, you know what, things are not changing. It's like Einstein said, you can't change you are not going to find a solution from the perspective where the problem was created in the first place, right? So you come to a point when it's like, all right, well, this is not working. And so for me, it was, my now ex-wife saying that she wanted to separate. And it really is that momentum or moment when your identity is ripped away from you, where you have that kind of, it's a near-death experience in the respect that an aspect of yourself dies. And I've talked about this a lot of times as well, that you have this canvas of who you think you are and kind of where you are going, painted perfectly, and suddenly that canvas is now blank. And that is a perfect, wonderful opportunity, even though you're suffering and you're reeling, and it's depression, anxiety, everything is like just cascading out of you. It is a wonderful, perfect opportunity to start afresh, because now you have a blank canvas and you can decide what to create on this canvas. Now, you might need a lot of help doing that. And I'm saying me and everybody who's going through things might need to work with a psychotherapist, you might need to work with a coach, whatever it may be. But it is that beautiful destruction. I think Ken Wilber talks about that, right?
Oh, yeah. There's so many people I've heard. I cannot really point that one out again. Yeah, I also followed a bit of Ken Wilber, but he's really intense.
Well, it's deep thinkers usually are, right? But yeah, it is. I really believe that beautiful destruction and allowing yourself to experience things and not judge them whether they're good or bad, so like today, it's Saturday here. I've been watching The Voice UK on the recordings, and not doing very much at all today. Just haven't felt like it, right? And yes, I could sit at the end of the day and beat myself up, and I was like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But no, that's what I needed to do today, right? And that's I think when we talked last year, we were talking about the book The Four Agreements, and really those two of those tenets in there, always do your best and use your words impeccably, those really resonate when it comes down to your own experiences. So use your words impeccably with yourself. So if you are in a situation where you're not feeling top of the world and you don't feel like, going out there and pursuing your purpose, then don't. Spend some time and just be kind to yourself and, find that rest and meditate, find time to just spend time with yourself. So it's, so it's, I can't remember what your original question was, or what the purpose, or what we talked about. It is the
don't remember anymore either.
But it's the journey of realizing that you have the opportunity if you so choose.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things here, but let's see how I can structure that for the podcast. I'm so much still in the Oliver Schirach show still goes on, but it's more focused on innovation and startups and creativity. So I'm so used to have over 2.5 years interviewed there. So you said you were it's nice how you explained the teenaging depression, right? The typical externalizing of the things that go on. You try to, as you say, run away, or you
that's
try
not
to
limited to teenagers, by the way. That went on for me until I was 44 years old. So
okay, so your teenage years were not
well, no, it was that. I think it's just how people treat it when they are not looking at themselves as a
source of the depression.
A part of their own experience. They kind of, and this is a cognitive bias that we have of the actor observer, where everything bad that happens to me is because of something external. Everything good that happens to me is because of me. So once you get away from that and understand that actually the common denominator for all your experiences is you. You are the one thing that is common for all your experiences. Everything else is impermanent. Everything else changes, people change, but you are the common denominator. So if you're having bad experiences, why is that? Who is having those experiences, and how are you perceiving those experiences? It's not limited. It wasn't limited to my teenage years, and my experience is that people that are kind of not living their lives to their fullest is because they are externalizing things, and that's not limited to any age category. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, well, but good I mentioned it that way, because you explained nicely here. In the spiritual growth, people call it the materialistic world, like just everything that is touchable and heavy and so on. But you said until 44. So what happened when you were 44? That did a switch button?
Oh no, that was when my ex-wife said she wanted to separate.
When you were 44, and then, but if you looked at everything as an experience, the good things were because of you, and the bad things because of something external. So, and now she's separated, and as you said, you had like your canvas painted with, I'm going to be old with her, the kids will grow up, and we're going to go to the weddings of our daughters or whatever. I don't know, you have daughters or boys?
Two daughters,
right? That's what I thought to remember, right? And then I'm going to be old, and eventually I'm laying on bed and say goodbye. And now at 44, your ex-wife or wife at that time just rips that canvas apart.
Mm-hmm.
But what changed then for you to be able to say, oh, it's not her which is the problem? Or how did you take that in the end? I mean, did you go dive deep into books, in meditation books, or did you fall into talk to one of your friends and he's like, I know something, you should go to whatever, Reiki, or you should do meditations, or you should go to this trauma treatment, or you should talk to a psychiater or psychologist? What happened for you to to
Well, see
accommodate the
that.
change?
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting part. I think the first aspect that happens is that your identity is ripped away from you. So suddenly, from one moment to the next, you have no idea who you are. So, you know, moment before, you are perfectly aware who you are. You're the breadwinner. You are the family father. You are, you know, you have all these identities and routines and all of these things. Now, the next moment, that doesn't exist anymore. So you move into a stage of really of nothingness, where the past really is the past. It's not or the future is not a continuation of the past. The future is now a complete blank canvas. So now, and it's the proverbial veil is kind of ripped off your eyes, as it were, or ripped away from your eyes. So for me, it was first thing I did. I went to my GP and I said, "This is happening, and I feel like crap, and I think I need to talk to someone." And my GP said, "Nah, you sound quite all right. Yeah, of course you're challenged right now, but yeah, no, people get divorced. It's fine. You sound all right. There you go. Bye-bye."
Thank you.
So I was like, all right, interesting. Went home and yeah, I had some really metaphysical experiences. There were kind of things that were coming up within me that first thing I did was to start meditating, like a lot. And it was just something that I was drawn to or pushed to, or, you know, felt that I needed to do. And as I was doing that and I was allowing in my mind to just settle down and quiet, then all this internal wisdom started coming up. So it was interesting. It was things that came up in meditation. I would then go and look up on the internet, and I would get it verified on the internet. So we're talking, you know, spiritual, energetic, all of these things. I sat in meditation and cured my 15-year-old sciatica in 2 weeks. So there were I cured my own allergies and stuff like this. So it was stuff was happening, and I was like, I have no idea how this is happening. You know, I didn't have really a belief system up until that. You know, I thought there was something beyond this. I felt that you know, consciousness survives the death. Always believed in reincarnation and such things. But now I was engaging with it, and it was so. Yeah, it was at points I thought I was having psychotic episodes, and but then you kind of had to settle into it, and so it was very interesting. It was a really tough 6 months, let me put it that way. It was really rough in terms of mental health and mental well-being, because there was so many things going on, obviously with the kids and divorce and all of that, but at the same time with all these new things that were coming up, you know, with healing and with mediumship and spiritual experiences and so forth. So it's kind of it's a bad time to have those experiences when you're reeling mentally. But it was apparently what I needed to experience at that time. So and that's, I'm a firm believer in that you experience the things that you're supposed to experience in order to learn about yourself in your own experiences. Your experiences are not there for you to learn about your external world. The external world is there to give you a reference point to experience yourself.
Yeah, so it's like a rough 6 months. I'm like, wow. So, but that's kind of like the low point for you in your life, you remember, right? Compared to the teenage years, that was it similar hard for you in the teenage years with the depression, or compared to that episode?
Yeah, I suppose, because of the coping mechanisms in the teenage years, it's one of those things, and this is what you do when you you're not dealing with your own crap, as it were. You push it down, right? So now you have X number of years of emotions that are stored up in your physical body and your energetic body and your mental body. And it's a perfect storm when you have that experience, or the veil is then removed from your eyes. Everything comes up. Everything comes up and wants to be treated. Because the challenge is, and this is where we often kind of get stuck, is emotions don't want to stay in your body. They want to escape, right? But we grow up, and especially men are grown up being told, don't be so sensitive. Get over it. Boys don't cry. Whatever it is. We're told, or we're conditioned to believe that emotions are dangerous and something to be avoided. Whereas, in actual fact, we should embrace our emotions and allow our emotions, acknowledge them, and allow them to kind of traverse out of our bodies. Because if we don't do that, we just keep them in our bodies, right?
Yeah. So if I understand you right, so the teenage years, the coping mechanism for you was to externalize it. By that, you basically stored it in different places of your body, as you said, emotional, spiritual, physical. And at 44, when your ex-wife told you, like, hey, enough is enough, we separate, you now chose to actually face all these things? Or was it a conscious choice that you actually looked at all these things which came up? Or
no, I think that was a higher choice, a higher dimensionality of myself that said, okay, well, obviously my ex-wife said enough's enough, but also this high dimensionality of me said, okay, enough's enough. Let's get this show on the road, right? You have a purpose to fulfill. You need to get on with it. And that's where, when you're sleepwalking, you're not really doing that. You're just going through the motions of life. You're busy dying as opposed to busy living. So it was a choice of an aspect of me, not my the kind of conscious mental faculty that is kind of experiencing this reality that we're in, having this discussion now. So yeah, it's kind of pushed on you in that respect, and it all releases at once, or rather, it releases to say, okay, you got all this to work on. So I just want to show it all to you, and then I'm going to put it back down again, and then you have to take one thing at a time, right?
That sounds just terrible. And you did that kind of looking at one thing at a time with meditation.
That was one of the tools, absolutely. And listen, I'm not done yet. I'm still working on it. But okay. At least, for the first, I would say 3 years, I still ignored it to the point, or because I was like, okay, well, as long as I hold these ideals of, spirituality, healing, what have you, as long as I hold those ideals, everything else will be healed out of me. And that's kind of the kind of new age idea that as long as it's love and light, then you will be healed. And unfortunately, I found out the hard way that's not really the how it works. These emotions are still in there, and they still want you to not acknowledge them, and you still are going to have to experience them. So yeah, after 3 years, I realized that I was exercising a bad case of spiritual bypass. And then I started I said to myself, I was like, okay, well, if I hold these ideals, I need to really bring them into my life. I need to embrace them. I need to embody them. And I need to live my life in the way in the way I believe it should be lived. And that's when I started to one thing at a time. And people always tell me that, and then you just go and heal that, the past or whatever it is. And I was like, well, how do you heal it? Well, you just kind of, sit with it, and then it'll be healed. But again, that didn't work for me, because I'm quite analytical, methodical, I believe in processes and so forth. And so, yeah, then I sat down and I had to figure out the process that worked for me, which is essentially, I look at, so that it boils down to just, when we look at life and we get overwhelmed, it's because we try to make sense of the utter complexities outside of ourselves, right? And it's impossible. We can't. Far too many variables that are there to allow you to experience things. Now, so what I tend to do is I try to boil them down to the bare essential, the very simplistic aspects of them. So if we look at life, so life is very complex, but in the most simplistic terms, life is a string of experiences, right? So from the point that your consciousness enters that collection or cluster of cells in your mother's womb, to the point that your consciousness leaves your physical body, you have a string of experiences. So everything you experience in the womb, and we know this in hypnotherapy, for example, when you do regressions, you can go in and go back in regression and have someone describe experiences when they're in the womb. So that's when your string of experiences starts. So, you're not really born when you come out into this, cold air, as it were. Your experiences start far earlier than that. And then all the experiences that you have, everything that shows up, people, places, weather, animals, trees, plants, whatever it is, they're there as props. They're impermanent, right? So don't worry about all these things. They are only there so that you can experience yourself in reference to other things. If you sat in a white space with nothing around you, only you there, you couldn't experience anything, because you would be the only reference point in that experience. And I'm talking now from the inception of your consciousness coming into this world to leaving. If you sat in this white space with nothing, you would not
60, 90 years.
Well, exactly. You wouldn't live that long, because you die way before that. But the point is that there wouldn't be any reference points for you to experience anything. right? So we have to have all these things come into our experiences. But if we keep in mind that those are impermanent, what is the experience about, really? It's not learning about places or people or things. It's learning about how am I responding to these experiences. So going back to the process, so I was looking at, okay, well, how am I responding to all these experiences I have in my life? Well, I used to respond by triggers. So something outside would trigger me, either in my mind, positive way or a negative way. Either something or someone would make me happy, or they pissed me off, right? That was how I was experiencing things. Now I came to the conclusion that, well, that's not working for me, because now I'm seeking the validation of my experiences on the outside. And the outside, all these things are impermanent. They will never ever come back to me again. So if I'm seeking validation for happiness from an experience that I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that's impossible, because it will never happen that way again. So the experience actually exists within me. So how do I approach each experience? So I look at the idea of non-judgment. So instead of looking at an experience as good or bad, I look at it from a perspective of, it's there to teach me something about myself, right? So I'm looking at approaching it with compassion. So I approach myself with compassion. I approach anybody else who's in the experience with compassion. I approach the experience itself with compassion. And then accept my role in the experience, as well as the role of all these props, impermanent props in the experience, and the role of the experience itself, of course. And then going to forgive myself and everybody else for the choices that everybody's made, and then go into discovering the gift. So gratitude. Having gratitude for having had the experience, because now I've learned something new about myself. So now that's how I went about working on healing. So the process I have is I observe myself on a continuous basis from a perspective of awareness. So if I get triggered, so someone pisses me off, for example, instead of acting out in defense of myself, because now if I get triggered, I feel threatened, right? So instead of acting out on that, I can observe myself and say, okay, I'm getting triggered by this person, but what is it? Because I know if there's something that triggers me, I hold an element of that within myself that is unhealed. So then instead of going into my mind and going, I need to defend myself, I go, okay, that's interesting. I'm getting angry. Why is that? What is the source of this anger? That's compassion, right? So I'm treating myself and the person who's, triggering me. I'm treating with compassion, not acting out in a, aggressive manner. Doesn't mean you should let up on your boundaries. At the same time, you do it with compassion, right? So now I'm looking at, okay, I've asked the question, where does this come from? If you ask a question, your subconscious or your higher self or whatever it is compelled to give you an answer. And that's the beauty of starting to ask yourself questions, because you're compelled to get an answer. Now I can look at, perhaps that anger comes from an interaction I had when I was 5 years old with a playmate who knocked me over the head with a spade or something, right? And that experience is still sitting with me. I might, as an adult, I might look at that experience as, why would that stay with me? It's just kids having, playing around and knocking about. But I have to look at it from the perspective of that child, because the child's brain, the child version of myself, that brain, the way that brain, or the experiences I had at that point, is going to perceive that experience very differently. So going back and then applying those compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude to that experience then allows me to heal that. And I might have to do that time and time and time again until I release that. And that's what I'm saying. It is a continuous process. It doesn't end.
There's actually two questions I have here. Let's just take the one first. You just mentioned the release. I mean, there's several books, several podcasts, several webinars, TED Talks, whatever, talking about, the attitude of gratitude, the, forgiveness, and, feel. You always need to feel. It's not a mental exercise, right? So you have to experience the feeling, the letting go, feel the gratitude. And for me, it's easier to feel love than gratitude. Somehow I have a touch on, how does love feel, kind of. When I do the gratitude exercise, I fell a bit off. I did it once for like 6, 7, 8 months continuously, and things started to come in place. And now when I do it again, I'm like, okay, but how does it feel again, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is letting go in the part of forgiveness, right? Because as you say, you might remember some fight you had as a small child, and you got hurt, your boundaries were broken. How does it feel like? When do you know now you have done enough inner child work, grown-up work to release whatever pain you're holding, forgiveness?
Well, answer your first question, or address the first comment. In terms of the feeling gratitude, for example, I have read the book Magic by Rhonda Byrne, for example, who wrote The Secret. And there are all those gratitude practices that you can do. And I did probably a good solid 6 months of writing every day, writing out my gratitudes. I was numb. I was empty. I didn't feel it. And so I think it's, you have to go to the points where you can believe your own gratitude. So, for example, when it comes to manifestation practice, and I've talked about this many times as well, you can't sit there and manifest $1 million in a week unless you firmly believe that that $1 million is coming your way, and that you're so focused on it, and it's actually in preparedness for you. Most people that are in a stage where they're earning a living, they can pay their bills, or they're in a state where they actually they don't earn a living and they can't pay their bills. For them to sit down and try to manifest $1 million, there is that belief disconnect. You don't actually believe you can do it. It's the same thing with gratitude. If you don't believe it, then you're not going to feel it. So you have to continuously feel into different situations and continuously try different situations, like, where can I feel gratitude, right? So I can feel gratitude in different aspects, like, for example, I installed a new SSD drive on my computer, for example. Now, going from a startup process of 5 to 10 minutes on my 5-year-old PC takes now 20 seconds. That, that I can feel gratitude for, right? So even if this is a benign kind of materialistic thing, the frustrations I felt with sitting and waiting for the computer to start up, especially when there's a power outage like we have today, where you would go into the thought process of, I'm going to start it up again, I'm going to have to start up all these programs, so it's going to take 20 minutes. Having the gratitude for not having to experience or to have to go into that again. Yes, I'm probably going to have to experience that at some point again, but feeling that gratitude, that is something, then I can tap into that, and then I can remember that. It's like, feeling gratitude, just think of that time when you installed that SSD drive on your computer and how it felt that you started up the first time and it went like that. Now that I can believe, right? And then
it's kind of connecting it to some place where you felt gratitude, and now you can kind of copy paste it, stupidly said, into another situation, and by that you can help it.
Yeah, but it's not something that is too far removed from you. So, for example, when I say 5 years ago, year out, sitting there having gratitude for my ex ripping my life apart, which of course she didn't. It was I ripped it apart because of my, you attract your own experiences. But when I was at that state, I was not in a position to have gratitude for her having done, having instigated that. Today I can do it because it's put me on a trajectory, and it's allowed me to get to where I am today in terms of my own process and so forth. But not 5 years ago. So when you do the copy and paste, make sure you do it with something that you have a seeming possibility of actually feeling gratitude for, right?
Yeah.
So just be careful with not to take too big of a leap. This is a continuous process, and a process is not leaps and bounds, right? So we do it gradually as and when we're ready to do it.
Yeah, I just also meant when you start a gratitude journal, and that's I downloaded. No, I bought the 6 minute journal on Amazon back then in 2019, and you can have like the follow-up where it's only about filling out your 6 minute journal, the gratitude, the best day and affirmation, and then what have you experienced, where could you improve, and thankfulness in the evening. And he is explaining in the first book, you don't buy the same book several times because it's thicker, because it explains the psychology behind these things and the application. Mm-hmm. And so especially I couldn't really understand this 5 minute journaling Tim Ferriss explained once. It's so simple. I do not know why it didn't go into my mind. I overcomplicated it, but he explained it even very simple, right? You just write down the 5 minute journal, 3 things in the morning and 2 things in the evening. Like, as I said, gratitude, 3 things, envision your day, how it works perfectly, the things you want to achieve today and how they pass in a perfect manner, and an affirmation, like whatever, the Jim Carrey version of I'm going to get a check for my explicitly super awesome acting for $10 million, right? He had something like that for 5-10 years in his pocket, and he got a $10 million check. So that's an affirmation, but this is kind of like a repetitive. But you can put other ones like, I'm just a great person today, I'm a great father, I'm a great whatever. And then the other one was 2 or 3 things that happened today which were awesome, right? Oh, people kept the door open, a car stopped so I can cross the street, whatever, small things. This is also training your attention on the positive little details which are there all the time, so we're not suppressing them. But let's say you start writing it down. I don't think Tim Ferriss talks about the feeling of it, or I didn't hear it, right? That could also be that I simply didn't hear it. in the book I mentioned in the 6-minute journal, he's explaining it, and you as well. So the copy paste, I mean, more like for the ones which have a hard time, what is the gratitude feeling, right? And you just explained it very nicely with the computer for the guys, probably also some girls, or you practice a music instrument and you finally get it, and the song sounds the way it should. You have this feeling in your body that could be explained as gratitude. And then you could go back to that feeling to say, I'm grateful for the cup of orange juice I have this morning. And
or, you know, if you like cooking, when you make a meal for your family and they really enjoy it, or you have guests and you make a meal for them, the gratitude you feel for having made someone else feel grateful, you know. So if you have a dog, just feeling gratitude for the unconditional love that the animal has for you, you know, whatever it is that can help you evoke that emotion, that will then be a stepping point for you to take the next level up. Rather than just staying at that, you know, my dog loves me unconditionally, I'm grateful for that, and just staying at that relationship, then you take that emotion and you say, oh, well, I'm grateful for having a nice house or a nice home or whatever it is, and you feel that gratitude, and you can then put that visualization into what a beautiful home to you looks like. That then creates the expectation or the attraction for you to draw an experience into your life, right? So it's using the emotions that you experienced, and this is where emotional intelligence comes from. You can't have emotional intelligence unless you experience your emotions, right?
Okay. And that goes down another road. So again, 2 open questions just from the last sentence you have. One was like the Heart Math Institute, I think it's called, in the US, and Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza, and so people. I think Tony Robbins also takes a bit from them in his teachings. It's like when you elevate your emotional state and the heart is in sync with your brain. That was in Joe Dispenza's book and his teachings. And then you put an intention on top of that. Things can happen. I think that's more or less the law of attraction. And I think that's where the gratitude journal and the forgiveness are going to. It's like to feel this heart brain connection, because you have like this thought of an event, of a material thing, of your computer, of your dog, your cat, your cooking, whatever it is. And now you have also the feeling coming with it. And I think when you can combine that also with the forgiveness, then that's actually bringing out the signals into the field, because the Heart Math Institute says you can measure the magnetic field from the heart, which is much further reaching than the brain. So the energy field we create, which is strongest, is coming from the heart. So,
and actually they are ignoring the third brain, which is your gut.
Which I'm not kind of understanding anymore, because it's always like the gut feeling. So what? So let's go down that road with the gut feeling, and then let's see if I can go back to the other questions. What is the gut feeling?
Well, I think if you look at what's her name, Sylvia Coquette, is that her name? Can't remember. She talks about intuition anyway. So, and when we look at this kind of life, 3D reality intuition, that kind of resides in your gut. So when we talk about, oh, I'm going to go with my gut, I have a gut feeling about this, you know, that's your intuition that tells you kind of directions to go in decisions that you're making. Then you have your heart-centered intuition, which is more to do with you know, creativity, connection, and so forth. And then your spiritual intuition, which kind of resides in above your brain kind of thing. So sometimes you'll feel this super connection with a person that you just met, and it kind of feels like you have this energy around your head, right? And there's that recognition, right? So yeah, it's now, this is of course non-scientific and it's metaphysics, but yeah, when we look at the way that the body stores, and this, you know, if you've experienced trauma in your life, you will recognize this. You can store those kind of memories in your body, and your brain doesn't even have to engage for you to be triggered by events outside of yourself that is going to trigger a reaction within your body. Your brain doesn't even engage with it. It's a memory that exists in your body. And that often comes from, you know, through your stomach, or, you know, like anxiety obviously oftentimes sits in your stomach. Depression often sits in your chest, in your heart area, right? So yeah, it's we're only now starting to understand how the brain, the heart, and the gut interact as three separate brains of the body. And it is, you know, when I sit to meditate, for example, as I said before, I bring my awareness down in my chest and I bring it away from my head to observe my experiences. So I sit within in my heart, and so even though I'm listening to something that comes in through my ears, I hear it in my heart, right? Or I can hear it in my guts, as it were. And it's just practicing that experience of observing your own experiences, right? So when I have that gut feeling, I can go there and I can ask the question, interesting, I have a gut feeling here. What's that about? And then I can communicate with that directly, rather than it being, I have a gut feeling, I really don't know what it is. Right?
Yeah. So
but also in terms of the emotions, it's also where you experience your emotions. So oftentimes, for me anyway, emotion starts down in the abdomen and then it floats up through my heart, and then it kind of goes out around the neck area. When I release it, it kind of goes out there. It's like my throat chakra. It's expressed through my throat chakra. So the emotions, they can sit wherever in the body, but they kind of come, when they release, they come into the abdomen and then rise through the heart space and release through the neck.
Yes,
so that's an energetic thing, and I'm describing in physical terms now, but it's something that happens in the energetic body, not necessarily the physical body, but we register as an experience in the physical body.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of open points I kind of try to pull together, you know, from depression to expression. No, but it's good you went in many directions. The one question I had open, which when you said, you know, non-judgmental, someone triggers you, and then I do agree with you, but then on the other hand, I was thinking like, we need to have clear boundaries for ourselves, right? It's also, we talked on the pre-show, so to speak, a bit very shortly. It's like people pleasing is a very common thing, or being just like trying to be in harmony, or the rebels are the other ones, right? They just do everything just for themselves. They don't care about how others are influenced by their doings and sayings. But yet, let's say you're a people pleaser, so your boundaries are always broken down, so you cannot really find out who you are. I mean, to experience your life here inside of not white space, but, you know, space filled with experiences and other people and other beings.
Props.
props. You kind of need to create your boundaries, right? So you can experience what you're here to experience. Otherwise, I have the feeling if you do not have the boundaries, you will experience things which remind you probably to take boundaries, but you're not going down the path you actually want to take from a higher perspective.
Yeah, and this is a very common misconception that boundaries are defense mechanisms, where don't cross my boundaries because then there'll be hell to pay, right?
Okay, no, I don't mean it like that.
No, I'm not saying that you believe in that, but a lot of people, that is a common misconception. So when I say that you observe your experience, and if someone triggers you, i.e. they go at you, they're screaming or yelling at you, they say, well, I need to defend myself. I say, why do you need to defend yourself? Well, they're attacking me. Yeah, but how do you react to that? Well, I need to yell back at them. Okay, why do you need to do that? If they're having a bad day, how about you having compassion for them having a bad day? Right? Now, of course, if they're yelling and screaming at you, then you have a choice. Or you have one of three choices. You can choose to walk away. You can choose to stay. And you can choose to change. So when I say change, I mean change your perception of the experience. So if you are being triggered by that person yelling at you, instead of reacting from the core wound, which it ultimately is, that triggers you, observe your experience and say, why is this person yelling at me? Well, because could be for a number of different reasons. I can't assume to know what that person is experiencing or what that person has experienced that makes them feel that they need to lash out at me. Now, I can respond by lashing out myself, but that's not going to resolve anything. It's only going to escalate things, right? So instead, I say, okay, I ask myself, what is it that this person has experienced that is causing them so much pain that they feel that they need to lash out to me? Now I can go into a state of compassion, because now I can see the child version of themselves that has the core wounding, and I can have compassion for that. I don't need to have compassion for the person yelling and screaming at me, but compassion for the child that experienced whatever the trauma it experienced, that is now being projected through this person yelling at me, right? And I can accept that that person is having a journey, and I can accept also whatever reaction I'm having, whatever, because I can control my thoughts, my words, and my actions. I can now accept whatever I react to that. If I react by saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I appreciate if you don't yell at me, we can actually talk about this in a sensible manner. Otherwise, I'm going to walk away. You accept that you act and react in a way that is going to be the best you can do at that time. Now, if you start yelling and screaming at them, that's the best you can do at that time as well.
Yeah, that's going back to the four
agreements. Yeah.
4 agreements.
So yeah, so it's the boundary is not about borders that you create around yourself, and it's like, don't infringe on this. Boundaries are natural and they are fluid, they're dynamic. My children, if they're having a bad day, they can yell and scream all they want at me. All I can do is say, please don't yell and scream. We can express ourselves in a different way and help them to understand how they can express themselves. But I always, especially when I talk to my children, I'm always emphasizing it is important that you feel the emotion that you're feeling. but you have a choice as to how you express it.
Yeah, that's kind of like acknowledge it. And that's the next thing, the next question I was going. You mentioned observing, right? The emotions, observing your doing, your being, just be the observer. I know it's a lot of Eckhart Tolle is talking about about observing, and it eventually becomes a part of you. In the beginning, it's very energy consuming, I would say, that you kind of try to always.
Well, it took me about 3 tries to read the book before I actually got it, and that was over a period of probably 3 or 4 years.
I simply couldn't stand to listen to him, but I think I got it in German first, and he also says German is not his, even though he's German by birth, he's feeling more competent speaking English, or it's feeling more natural to him. So probably
I'm the same way. Swedish is my mother tongue, but I'm far more comfortable speaking English than Swedish. So yeah, I get that.
For me, it's like German, not so much. Swiss German, and I'm with my friends, it's good. Else, I'm really thinking also more English than Swiss German. But anyway, so for me, it could have been because I listened to him in German, and then when I found and started reading in English, it somehow resonated better. But I also was reading Gary Zukav, and like two months ago, I broke my hand because of emotional unawareness or emotional whatever, acting out, or whatever you want to call it, right? And I've been also started reading Joe Dispenza, but I wasn't fast enough. I had to give it back to the library. Couldn't prolong it. And reading these things, it's like, wow, okay. So as you say, you have to choose how to react on the emotions that come up, and observe the emotions in your body. And that's also why I mentioned this in the depression, right? Depression, you do not feel. You just have this clock. I heard a German guy saying he had like this cloak of depression which comes, and the more he got out of depression, he was able to actually feel when that cloak was kind of snuggling around him, so he could
it's like a lead cloak, I would describe it as. It like weighs you down. It's like a fur coat that has been drenched in water, and it's heavy, it just weighs you down, right?
And you don't feel, you don't really feel, you don't feel joy or anything. I mean, it's everything is like you're numbed, right? I think that's depression. And so, and I just smashed the hand on the wall, but I said, I don't want to hit the door frame because I'm going to break my hand. And still, I broke my hand. So I was, in the split second, I was like, don't hit too hard, don't hit like this because you break the hand. It was just like, fuck it, right? And shit, I broke my hand. And then reading these things is like, okay. So I had another episode a week or so ago where I just felt like, shit, I just wanted to hit the wall. And then I said, stop. Okay, how do I feel? And I was like, there's nothing. But where is that feeling coming from? In my hand, right? I could feel that in the hand, and in my head somehow it was like, this anger. But when I listened into the body, there was just silence. So as you say, you have to be, emotional intelligence means that you are aware of the emotions running through your body. And what I've also read is it's kind of like a compass. So the more you're aware of the different emotions, the more you're aware danger is coming, right? Because whenever there's something dangerous, it's in the belly, it's in the back, it's wherever it is for you. Whenever something exciting is coming, you feel something here. So when you start to think something wrong, something against your personality, against your being,
authenticity,
your authenticity, right? And that's also the podcast, is to express yourself. You need to be authentic with yourself. So basically being aware of your emotions can help you saying, whoa, you're not authentic with yourself. You have thoughts which are against you, not supporting you, or thoughts and feelings are coming together, I've heard. But I'm in the process of learning. And so how do you practice emotional awareness? I have an idea what you're going to say, but
so the technique, again, it is really practicing to observe your experiences from your awareness. So whether you practice or you first bring yourself to understand what awareness is. And this is part of that process of understanding that I am the thinker, I'm not my thoughts. So when you take that first step to understanding that you are the thinker, then you say, okay, what aspect of me is the thinker? Is it my physical body? Is it my mental body, energetic? What aspect of me is the thinker? Or what aspect of me is the observer, as Eckhart Tolle talks about, right? So from my perspective, I then go into this aspect of my awareness where I can observe myself. I can observe my thoughts, I can observe my breathing, I can observe sounds, I can observe myself seeing, I can observe myself talking. So now, for example, I'm observing myself talking to you. So I have a slight distance between my awareness and the words coming out of my mouth. And that's just something you can practice when you're in meditation, for example. Because once you do develop a practice of doing that, then you do that in your daily life. And then when something comes into your, and I talk about this in my psychometry classes, and the purpose of those classes is to learn to observe yourself and observe your baseline. So you know your baseline at any given time. And when I'm talking about your baseline, I'm talking about your experiential baseline. So what are you experiencing on any given moment? Like temperature on on your skin, tensions in your body, sensations in your body. Are there any aches or pains? Or, energetically, is there something? What are, your energetic body? What's the baseline for that? So if we look at the 5 koshas, or the 5 bodies in Vedic tradition, we've got the astral, the soul body, you got the energetic body, the mental body, and the physical body. So knowing the frequency and the vibration of those bodies at any given time, then whenever there's a change happening, then you can notice that. So if you have an emotion coming up, that's in your mental body, right? If you know your baseline of your mental body, then when something comes up that is different, you can immediately pick up on that and go, interesting, here's something changing here. What is that? Right? And that way you can then, it's not about disassociation. It's about not engaging and not judging what comes up. Because if we don't observe ourselves from a perspective of our awareness, then once the emotion is fully in your body, then it's too late. Because then our fist is already going towards the wall. Right? But as you were able to observe yourself saying stop, and start looking and start asking questions, where is this emotion? Then and this is, we talk about this in psychotherapy, then you're engaging in pattern interruption. You're interrupting the patterns that you are acting out from your core wounding or your subconscious. So for example, when you brush your teeth, if I ask you now, how do you brush your teeth? You really have to think about it. Well, I don't know. I put toothpaste on. Well, do I put water on first? No, put toothpaste first. No. You have to think about how you actually do it. But when you're standing there doing it, you don't need to think about it. You just do it, right? And that's because when we learn something new and we create a habit out of it, it becomes a pattern. And our conscious brain doesn't engage or concern itself with patterns. It delegates that to the subconscious brain or the subconscious mind. And this is tying back to gratitude practice, affirmations. It's about building habits and patterns. Because if you build these patterns and that then automatically gets subordinated to the subconscious, you then start acting out from a new perspective. And you're in a process of healing your core wounding. So this is what I'm saying. Whenever I have a trigger and something comes up, I say, interesting. So a positive word, right? Interesting. I have anger coming up. Why is that? So I interrupt it, just like you did. No, I'm not going to put my fist in the wall again because I know I'm going to break it. So let's figure out what's going on here instead. Okay, well then perhaps there is a link between your brain and your arm, because we're men, we know, fist, anger, it has that connection, right? So you don't necessarily have to have the emotion in your body. It could be something that is triggering you from a different perspective. And it's asking that question that is then ultimately going to give you the answer for that. So I think it is important to observe those aspects of yourself as they come up, and building a practice of constantly be aware of your baseline, simply. Because then whenever there is a change, you then know what you can then engage with it, or not engage with it, you can observe it and say, interesting, I wonder what this is. So okay. Then if you have a gut feeling, you can observe that, heart feeling or brain, etc.
Yeah. So how would you go about to get a knowledge of the base, line of our emotions? Is it something like I've gotten the exercise of having 5 or 9 times, I don't remember, an alarm which says, okay, how do you feel? How do you breathe? Like, do I breathe only here in the top? Do I breathe all in the body? What do I hear? What do I think? Is it kind of like something like that? So like every 1 or 2 hours you have an alarm. It's like, okay, how do I feel? Check in the body. Okay, this is how it is. And then over time you get just used to check into your body. Or is it I go and have 1, 2, or 3 meditations during the day where I'm 5, 10, 15 minutes and I'm just sitting there? What is your take on that?
So I think for me, in a way, it's been practicing in meditation and then trying to bring that into my waking life. So in meditation, really just allowing your awareness to float within yourself and observing everything that goes on within your body. So observing your breath, observing sounds, observing light coming through your eyelids, observing taste in your mouth, observing smells in the air, the temperature on your skin, all of these things like sensations in your body, tensions. If I'm uncomfortable, rather than engaging with the discomfort, moving around like, just sit with it for a bit and say, okay, I'm uncomfortable. What's that doing to me? How does that feel? Why am I uncomfortable? Why do I have tension that is causing this discomfort? And then at some point, obviously, you say, I give myself permission to change my position so I can get into comfort. But it's sitting with that observation. You will then eventually kind of get that feeling of, this is what it feels to observe myself. And it is that feeling of, for me in a way, I observe myself from a point between my shoulder blades. And it's as I was saying before, I can observe myself talking to you, right? And it is almost like I'm not doing the talking, it's someone else. But I'm still part of the process. I understand it's me talking, but it feels like it's someone else. So it's not disassociation where it's not me, it just feels like it's someone else.
Okay. Now I'm going a bit far out, but let's see. In today's world, many talked about it. So I had 2 years ago, the ayahuasca ceremony. No visuals, no, it was all just in my body. I looked at the other guys, which were flying through the universe and whatever not they experienced. Like, that's interesting. I just, I was in my body. But the first day it happened exactly what you say. I was just talking, but it wasn't me. I was just watching myself talking with the guy which was watching me because I was outside. I wanted to be in nature. So I was alone outside and he was watching over me. So nothing happens. And I was just talking. And I couldn't really stop it. Once in a while I was talking consciously, but the rest was just, I was just watching me talking. It was like a theater game.
So the interesting thing here is, where did you perceive yourself talking from? Were you still in your body, or was it from a perspective outside your body?
Back then, I have not really gone into a lot of these teachings, right? So it was kind of like the first experience without having any theoretical knowledge.
The theory is not really material here.
Yeah. But so back then, it just was. So I didn't really, I just didn't really think about it, right? Or I was there, but it was kind of like I was the whole body, right? I had the sensation of the whole body, but the talking was kind of separate from it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, but I cannot say if I was outside looking at it or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So.
Because you can also have that out of body experience, right?
Yeah, I haven't been watching myself laying there on the floor and talking. No, I was in the body, and
it was just that's exactly what I'm talking about. You can teach yourself to do that, and do that on a daily basis, or like as you go about your life.
Practically, if you have to talk to someone you don't want to talk, so like, okay, I disconnect, let the body do the rest. I'm just watching the body talk.
Well, you're still engaging with, you're still part of it, but you are, because you are perfectly aware of your baseline, talking is an experience.
Yeah.
So it becomes part of the baseline that you are energetically engaging in a conversation, but it allows you to engage with it in a more conscious way, because you are seeing what has happened, what's happening, what's going to happen, and what is happening in the moment. So you have it's almost like that bird's eye perspective of your experience. But at the end of the day, it's where you place your consciousness. So it is in a way, it has the same sensation as an out-of-body experience, but it's still within your body. It's a bilocation experience within your body.
Yeah.
You can also have a bilocation out-of-body experience where you're aware of your body, but you're perceiving yourself from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's exercises, Jeffrey Allen duality, or whatever. He's talking about that, moving around in your body. For some people, it works. Be in your knee, kind of be aware there. But let's round this up. We've been talking for quite some time, and I could continue, but on the other hand, I haven't slept well the last days, and I'm one interview after the other at the moment. So I think
that's all right.
I need to give myself, but I see there's so much more we could talk. And you said you have so many podcasts already lined up. It's crazy how you do that. Let's see if I'm getting into a flow like that. But onto the respect of depression to expression. I mean, now I'm not sounding depressed at all, but sometimes I have this. So we have established in this situation, in this talk, because depression doesn't come from one thing. I mean, we are all aware of that. It can be a head injury, it can be a poisoning, heavy metal poisoning, which is affecting your brain, affecting.
Well, it could be a physical thing, it could be a mental thing, it could be an energetic thing.
Right, it could be trauma, it could be one
or it
event.
could be a spiritual thing. You know, it's some sort of trauma to some aspect of your body. So whether that being, as we talked about before, the physical, mental, spiritual, astral, or I'm missing one, energetic. Yeah. So yeah, it really depends where the trauma happens, but it comes from some level of trauma. Yeah, for sure.
And that means energy. Like if you talk about Ayurvedic and Chinese mythology, it's energy is not flowing; it's blocked, and therefore you cannot express yourself fully, I think, right? So I don't know if you agree on that, but that's kind of my take at the moment.
I would say you can't experience yourself fully.
Experience, okay. And therefore you go like, you pull inwards, right? And you depress. And in our society where we grew up, Sweden, Switzerland, Europe, America, I cannot say for South American tribes and Africa and stuff like that.
Right.
We learn it to externalize it. Something is wrong. We get an antidepressiva. We are going partying. We're going having crazy sex. I mean, Gary Zukav is really good on that part of emotional unawareness. How is it expressing itself?
Yeah.
It's avoiding the pain, and therefore you're kind of depressed to some degree as soon as you're alone. And then the way to self-expression, to the authentic self, the true self, whatever your passion, what did you say? Your purpose, right? We're looking for the purpose. Some people say the purpose is to be alive, to live life. So from our talk, I can see meditating in different ways. We haven't talked about the subject of meditation. I mean, that's a podcast in itself, I would say.
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Right. So meditating in whatever way that pleases you. And I'm definitely sure I'm going to have podcast episodes on meditation, either with Chistopher or other people. So that's one thing, to be aware of your emotions, feelings, as you said, right? And by that, you're getting more in touch with yourself, because you get in touch with your baseline on this 5 bodies according to the Ayurvedic teachings.
Tradition, yeah.
And then by that, you can loosen up these different traumas, these different blockages, and then you become more yourself. And what will happen then? When you're yourself, how will you express yourself? What is your experience?
Well, see, the challenge I've found is, as you talked about as well, is when you are in the throes of depression, you don't feel anything. You're numb, right? Yeah. So how can you observe how you're feeling when you're not feeling anything?
Oh, yes.
Right. So then you need to go, well, you don't need to, but it's suggestible. And I, just as a side note, I suggest to anybody who's experiencing clinical depression, or that, you know, you are not feeling well, go and see a professional, go and see a psychotherapist, so that you can, because oftentimes it is this overwhelm of, you know, our depression is tied to our past experiences, anxiety is tied to our future experiences, right? So when you are experiencing overwhelm, that's when we experience this depression. We get this coat, this lead coat or cape or whatever it is, that is weighing us down, because we don't have the tools or the practices to deal or to work through this overwhelm, right? So I feel that the best way to do that is always to go and discover your core wounding, because that is undoubtedly, unless you've had a physical trauma or something like that, that's where your the core, or where the depression comes from. It's something to do with your conditioning, you know, how you grew up. It could be past life trauma, if you're a believer of past lives. It could be ancestral trauma. So, for example, you know, the Holocaust, for example, has caused trauma down the generations of Jewish families, right? So it's not necessarily only something that we've experienced immediately in our life, but something that our ancestors or our soul has experienced. And it's going back and allowing ourselves to experience that, to then release that. You release that energetic blockage that is created by that, core wounding, as it were. That will then allow you to start lifting the lid and start releasing these emotions in a controlled way, right? And it is also a choice when we're sitting there in the throes of depression to say that rather than choosing to kind of delve deeper into the depression, to choose to say, I know this is how I am right now. It doesn't have to be this way. I can choose to seek a solution. That's been my challenge anyway, that when I'm in the throes of depression, it is very easy to go down the route of I'm looking to victimize myself, to say, I'm depressed, this is how I feel, I don't give a shit anymore, I'm just gonna sit here and be depressed, right? Rather than make the choice and say, you know what, I recognize, I acknowledge I'm depressed, but I also know that I don't have to be this way. I choose to take a step now to move out of this depression. I'm going to accept myself for the state I'm in, but what choices can I apply to kind of move myself out of it? Just a little step, even, right? Because sometimes it's almost like we feel that we are trapped in the depression.
Exactly. Yes. Especially if it's the first time. I mean, if you talk to people which never had a depression or a burnout, they're just like, what is going on? If you had a depression, you were coming out of it. I think what you're saying, right, it's more helpful because you have experienced a depression before, and then perhaps for a few months or a few years you were out of it. And now it comes back and like, oh, I have a choice, right? But if it's the first time you come in a really deep depression and someone tells you, you have a choice, you can just, accept it. I'm depressed and now I do something against it. It's quite hard when you first time experience that.
It's seemingly impossible, right?
Yes.
And it can be tremendously triggering if someone says, oh, just get over it.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
It's like, well, I don't know how to get over it. And that's exactly the challenge is the choice is to go and find a tool or practice that will at least allow you to put one foot outside of it. Because it's recognizing that you are in that state and recognizing that, you know what, I'm not capable of moving out of it because I don't have the tools to actually do it. I'm not resourced to do it where I am today. So that is when you then can ask yourself the question, all right, if I don't have the tools or the resources to do it, how do I go about getting that? And then you start taking positive action, going out, finding tools and resources that will then help you to move out of that state that you're in. Because it really is an attention that our mind is drawn to. If the attention is in the past, we have this core wounding that has caused us to have experiences in our lives. And this is where I go back to the non-judgment. Non-judgment is a great tool to move out of, take one step out of that depression. Because you can start looking at your experiences without judgment, and going through the compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. Because then you can start working through even the most recent experiences you've had. That gives you a platform to at least have the tool to say, well, you know what? Yes, I recognize that I can have compassion. And then suddenly you might tap into a feeling of forgiveness. And guess what? Now you're not numb anymore. Now you're starting to feel. And once you allow more of those feelings to come about, now you can move out of that heavy cloak, and you can move out of that idea of depression. But it is, we get hijacked by our brains. We get hijacked by our conscious, or the I don't like the the terminology ego, but people seem to like it, using it. So we get hijacked by our egos. And it is that that draws our attention to these states of mind, but it is only by the tools and practices and the habits and patterns that we consciously and install with our authentic intention that we can then move out of these low vibrational states.
Yeah, and there's from there we can go another 1 hour and
or two
or two, also about the ego and awareness. I mean, I did metacognitive treatment, which was something in Manchester University, I think was the guy, and a Danish PhD, or a Danish doctor PhD girl went there and researched, and she did, cognitive training, change the negative to the positive. And she said, no, if she would have known these years before she did the PhD with, this teaching, she would have changed so much beforehand, because changing negative to positive doesn't make the thoughts go away. They still stay there, right? So the ego still has something to feed. It's being aware of the thoughts and being aware of the feelings that generated and let go of them, which she found out helps.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Removing your attachment to that things have to be labeled good or bad. And your experience is neither good nor bad. It is just an experience, and realizing the experience is there to teach you something about yourself.
Yes. Yeah, and then if you start to how you call it, ruminate, that's the word. That's what I learned reading that book. Rumination. Grübeln in German. Yeah, you ruminate over the same thing over and over, and that's why so many very intelligent people tend to be depressed, according to the research. It's like creatives and the crazy scientist. It's not a myth. It's because you learn through academics and also through whatever beliefs the creatives have. You need to think a lot before you start drawing. No, just start drawing. And what I learned there, unfortunately, I don't apply it enough, is, but if you have a problem, like you're divorced, put aside half an hour a day. From 5 to 5:30, I have time to think about my divorce. The rest of the day, whenever the divorce comes up in my head, I slightly push it. Don't force it away. I've seen just a Buddhistic video. The guy said, whatever you try to force away, right? He took a pendulum. The longer you try to push it away, eventually it will hit your face because it comes swinging back. The things you want to have and you pull towards you, eventually they will move away. Just relax into the situation how it is. So it's also with these negative experiences, right? Or your wife, husband has cheated you and you don't know how to go about, or whatever, or you lose both the job. If you think all day about it, you will end up in depression. That's the research showing there. And the way out is to, as you said, disconnect with it, but have like a half an hour, perhaps an hour, where you can.
Well, you schedule time with yourself that you allow yourself to ruminate.
Yes, for that.
Because then when the thoughts, as you say, when the thought of the divorce comes up during the day, you can acknowledge it and you can say, no, I have a scheduled time to think about this, so therefore I'm not going to think about it now. So you're not pushing it away, you're just allowing it to settle because you have a scheduled time to think about it and ruminate on it.
Yeah.
And then once you're done with that, then it's like, okay, now I'm going to think about these things. And that's why I'm talking about that you can control your thoughts, your words, your actions. So you can control your thoughts, but you do that in a compassionate way with acceptance and forgiveness. So if you have a bad thought coming up, and oftentimes obsessive compulsive disorder, you know, the client who presents it might have a situation where they have thoughts of hurting someone. They would never hurt someone, but they have the thoughts of it, right? And they can't control that process of thinking. And that oftentimes compulsiveness is connected with depression, and then or the obsession rather. And then the compulsive part is a coping mechanism. So the washing your hands 15 times every time you open a door or something. That's the compulsion. That's to cope with the obsessive thought. So but you can work through that by understanding it and breaking those patterns, right? So it's really a process of understanding and allowing yourself to control your thoughts, but doing it in a compassionate way.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of discipline, and you need help. And I have done that classes in January, February, and for the last 3-4 weeks, I want to reach out again because I can feel I'm all alone now, right? Because of a broken hand, I didn't work, and the work I did was physical. Yeah. So, and I see my kids 2 to 4 days a week, and rest. I don't see many people, but I'm always busy with the dog, walking the dog, and now with the podcast. So I'm talking to a lot of people on that theme. So I can see the theory is there, but sometimes it's really good having someone to just remind you.
Yeah.
Because suddenly a week is over and like, have you done it? Like, oh my God, not thought of it. So it is not easy if you're depressed or if you have these kind of things to change it. Some people can, but it takes a lot of willpower. And when you're depressed or have some condition, that willpower is not so strong, right? And then and then we can also talk about food, a different lifestyle, sleeping, activities, and then we are not going down that road because otherwise.
Or actually, another thing is also if you are neurodiverse, if you are outside the norm, as it were. Neurodiverse being autistic or ADHD, or perhaps you're gay, but you grow up in a society where being gay is not accepted. Then you go into that depression because you don't know how to handle that. There's no safe space for you to work through and expressing yourself for who you truly are and authentically are. So there are all these different aspects that can have an impact on your mental health and mental well-being, and can then result in clinical depression.
Yeah, you need a safe space. You mentioned it here. You don't feel safe. I've heard that so many times. So if you're depressed and you do not feel safe, it's very, very hard to get out. But
when doesn't make it impossible though. And I think that is super important for anybody who's experiencing depression at any level, whether that is temporary or clinical, is to know that it does not have to last forever.
No, but when you're there first time, it's really sometimes hard. But now we talked about all these things to get out of it. So to close off, what is self-expression in the end for you?
Self-expression. It's having the courage to show up who you are authentically. Now, that authenticity is also a discovery process. So what I find is me authentically today is going to be different from the way I'm going to perceive it tomorrow, or the way I perceived it 2 years ago. It is a continuous discovering process of discovery. I feel that is, it's not even peeling layers of an onion, because I might go back to some part that was authentically me 3 years ago, that I might bring back in again, and I might find authenticity in that again. So I think it is really a matter about having the courage to show up who you feel that you are at any given moment, and being in that present moment, and being with yourself utterly and totally present with yourself and the experience that you're having.
Yes. I think with that, we can close it down, because I think when I look on the watch, we have around 2 hours. There's no timer here on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I think that's more than enough. I will not split it up into 2 episodes, because I don't know how to do that.
My podcasts usually run an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I think it allows you to go into depth when you run it a bit longer. So yeah, I appreciate that you gave me a space to express myself and do so safely. And it's been great having this chat with you, Oliver.
Yes, and for everyone that listens, where do they find out more about you? Because as I said, it was hard for me to really absorb all the information you give out. You have, yeah, you said something about you're like a volcano, which
lava just keeps flowing out. Yes, I am and that's I keep talking and I keep expressing, and it's one of those. It's a liberating thing once you give yourself permission to express yourself authentically. It's like just flows out of you. So my coaching workshop website is the alchemyexperience.co.uk, and you can find my podcast obviously on Spotify, Google, Apple, all of them. And it's the Alchemy Experience podcast. So just search for that, or search for my name, Chistopher Lembke, and that's Lembke. And also we have a new project, which we haven't talked about much, but it's really about giving people the opportunity to release their core wounds and energy, and giving them opportunities to learn tools and practices around that. And it's called the Infinity Life. So it's the infinity.life is the website for that. And it's a course that you can take over 8 weeks to help build those tools and practices that we've been talking about here. Yeah,
but it's awesome. As I said, there's so much more we can talk about, and I hope it's not the last time I have you on the show. And perhaps I can be on your show, but your show is already planned for the next 2 months, I've seen, or
2 months, yeah. 4 months, 3 months, yeah.
You already have the recordings for 3 months. I'm like, wow. Yeah. That's not like my process is at the moment, who knows? And so if you want to reach out to me, you can find Oliver Schirach. There are 2 Oliver Schirachs, but the other one is not so social media present. And of course, you find the podcast as you found it, From Depression to Expression. And if you want to send a message, send it to oschirach@gmail.com. So with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you.